Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name's Jacob, joined as always by Carver. How's it going, man? How are you doing?
Doing well. It's a jam-packed show today. Thank you for tuning in to the listener. How are you, Jake?
Doing good. Yeah, it's a busy full week at Dortmund, and we got another game in a couple days. Um, Appreciate everyone who joined us. If you missed it, it feels like it's been a while since we've done an episode, but that's just because there's been two games smashed into a week. And so on the weekend, we had the Heidenheim match. And I guess we had been recording earlier episodes in the week, like either on a Monday or Tuesday night if we can. So just little notes for maybe anyone who's new to the BVB podcast. When we have a Champions League game or a Pokal game midweek, we're going to try to record after both games so that we can talk about both. But for this last Heidenheim match, we did a live watch along on our YouTube, which was really fun. That was Carver's done it a couple times. It was the first one where I joined in. Cool to talk about the match in real time, have our real time reactions, and then break down the match a little bit before. So if you want a little extra content, if you want to hear a little bit about the Heidenheim match as an example, make sure you keep an eye out for those watch-alongs. We don't have it set that we're going to do it every Bundesliga match, but I think here and there we're going to try to do it a little more this season, so a little extra content if you can join us on those. So just keep an eye out, and I'll just give the plug right now. If you want to join our Discord, a great way to chat with us and fellow Dortmund supporters from across the country throughout the week when there's a match. And we'll, of course, drop there when we're doing watch-alongs and on our socials, too. But you can get the link to all our socials and our Discord in the description of this episode. And now that, the business is out of the way, got all the admin stuff taken care of, you know where to find us. Let's get into some football. We got an exciting week. It's been an exciting week so far for Dortmund. 2 out of 2 wins, starting the Champions League with a win, winning again on the weekend in the Bundesliga, still undefeated in the league. Exciting four-goal match. Man, what are your, I guess, general thoughts? I know we talked about it a lot in the watch-along, but yeah, I think there was a lot of up and down in that match. It was exciting. Then I was panicking because I didn't want what happened last year to happen again against Heidenheim, but ended up pulling out with the 4-2 win.
Yeah, I had to dip a few minutes out early in the game and for the live stream, so I didn't get to see the end of that one. But it was really encouraging display and result against a tough team. I mean, Heidenheim, it's only their second season in the Bundesliga, but they placed 8th last year and earned everyone's respect with their never say die mentality. Like you mentioned before, it was the same kind of situation where we're up 2 goals at home against Heidenheim 2 years in a row, and then they come crawling right back. They do not give up. Heidenheim are also at the top of the table with 0 goals conceded, 6 goals scored. So it was a pretty tough game, man. I mean, Heidenheim is a very difficult team to break down at times. They press well, but Dortmund, I think, for the first competitive game this year, had a clear game plan in mind. Players looked focused. They executed the game plan with some conviction too, which I know Thomas Frank. Now I'm blanking on Heidenheim's coach for whatever reason, but he always, says
Frank
the same
Schmidt.
thing. Frank Schmidt, yeah. Frank Schmidt. He has the same game plan and mentality with his players too. He wants, his players to be executing things with conviction. I think you saw a lot of that from Dortmund. The precision and first touch wasn't there at times. That was still lacking, but the overall performance was really, really promising. And I'm hoping to see more of that system here going forward as opposed to the first few games.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned, first few games, we talked a lot about lineup and formation and how that was looking because it was this ever-changing thing, looking a lot like a back 3, back 5, which I know has caught a lot of people off, and we're like, oh, what are we doing? And this is where we did see some rotation, some of that being Schlotterbeck had the red card, so he was out for this game. But it was kind of back to, I mean, pretty solid. It looked pretty solidly like a 4-2-3-1, which I liked a lot. It seemed very structured. I don't know. It seemed to flow well. I liked the setup and formation. So I'll just start with the full lineup though. Kobel in goal, obviously. We had Rierson playing at right back. Anton and Sula are 2 center backs with Benzabaini getting his first start. It's been a while, but
first start in 2024, if you could believe it. This entire calendar year. Isn't that a crazy stat?
Benzabaini back in the lineup. We see Gross and Mecha. Kind of a surprise for a lot of people, I think, are 2 holding pivots. Malen, Brandt, and Adeyemi. And then Girassi getting a start. making his Dortmund debut.
And also the first time that Brandt has been captain in the Bundesliga as well. So lots of changes here in terms of personnel and this side. I mean, like you mentioned before, Guirassy his first start as well. So pretty exciting lineup here. I was a little bit surprised that Guirassy was given the green light to start here, and he did play a bit more even later in the match than I was anticipating. Obviously, I mean, we don't have the insight of exactly where his fitness levels were at, but coming off such a long injury, I thought he was only going to get 15, 20 minutes and see more of the pitch in the Champions League game, but it's really almost in the complete reverse in that. And we touched on the 4-2-3-1 already. I just wanted to say my general reaction here is just, again, very, very positive, encouraging performance, especially in the attack. I mean, again, very focused, very purposeful under this shape. Players were back in their best positions for the most part. And with the addition of Guirassy as the focal point of the attack, Dortmund were clearly the superior side early on, which is not something that a lot of teams can say against Heidenheim. I mean, just those last few games of the season, last year, Heidenheim beat Bayern Munich. There was a lot of upsets that they had last year, and it was no coincidence that they just fell their way into 8th place in the league last year. I mean, they are a force to be reckoned with. So having Guirassy was huge for this instance against a tough side. SHININ emphasized in the post-game comment that Guirassy gives our game a different dimension. He's not only a classic center forward, but he is also a player that drops back and creates space for his teammates. You saw a lot of the examples in this game as well of that happening. His work rate is there. His hold-up play is there. And his strength, of course, too. His finishing ability. Of course, he didn't score this game, but you could see the talents there. I mean, he is just Füllkrug to a whole nother level. I would still kind of like to have Füllkrug in the side because once ever he comes off, and we saw you go right back into the same problems that we saw in the first 2 games in this Champions League game against Club Brugge. But Guirassy really just takes our attack to a whole nother level at just him being that pure number 9.
Yeah, we were, hitting on him a lot during the live watch along too, and I was kind of I'd seen him play for Stuttgart. Obviously, I know the contributions he had last year. Like I knew all that coming into this season though. Like with this signing, there was just this bit of like I want to say Sour Patch Kids is not the phrase. Bittersweet is the phrase I'm looking for because that was the Füllkrug thing. The having as many strikers as we did, obviously that's changed quite a bit. But it seemed weird bringing him in if Füllkrug was going to stick around. Obviously, we did eventually see him going out the door because I liked Füllkrug. I liked him a lot last year, and not to belittle what I think Guirassy could do and what we're seeing now already. But then the fact that he was also coming in injured was just kind of like, oh, well, we signed this big striker, but we can't even see him play for a while. Now we're seeing him play. And yeah, he was great. And we were hitting on it a lot, especially his link up play, how he was dropping in. And we've seen this a lot with kind of both formations, but the 4 to 5 players up top have just been flying all over the place. It's this like control chaos, like whether it's Brandt, Adeyemi, they're all going out wide. They're all coming back to the middle. Like you just see this constant rotation, and Guirassy fit right into that. And I thought that was because at first we were playing without a kind of an out-and-out striker or a target striker, like when Guirassy was injured those first few matches. But we're still doing it, and I like it a lot because I think it does confuse the defense a little bit if someone's just like, my job is to track Adeyemi, which is already hard because he's so fast. Same thing with Malen. And then they just switch sides of the field. Like it's kind of hard to track. And then throwing Guirassy in the mix, though, like it was beautiful. It was so good. He had such great link-up play. He was dropping in so deep at times. And we said it over and over. It's like, yeah, man, he didn't get a goal, but he was huge in this match. He had such an impact.
Yeah, no matter the fact that Guirassy drops a little bit deeper in midfield or he's pressing against that back line, either way, it's very similar to Haller last year when he was fit in that spring whenever we were on the winning streak. Players just gravitate towards that number 9, leaving space out on the flanks, especially deep in the midfield too. Brandt had plenty of space to operate in this game, and I mentioned that a handful of times on the live stream here. Heidenheim had a 4-2-3-1 to start the game, but once they went down 2-0 early, they switched in almost to a 5-3-2, making it easy for us to play out of their press. I mean, they just didn't commit enough numbers forward, so Gross would find those pockets of space to be an open man, find one of the fullbacks out wide, and then we're just kind of off to the races. And then Brandt's obviously there for an option as well. So Heidenheim they looked uncomfortable, which again, pretty rare to say against an opposition of that kind of quality, right? I mean, Heidenheim usually are a team that despite being only the second year in this division, they can boss teams. They can boss teams, and they're higher quality than them. They're no stranger to going toe to toe with really even European giants, you name it. So this is one of those rare occasions that Heidenheim really did look uncomfortable, and you have to give Dortmund a lot of credit for that. I mean, they look the superior side here, and all credit to SHININ for how he set that up. And it's, again, very encouraging. All in all, good performance, and even better result, despite almost letting it slip again like last year. There were some nervy moments, like you mentioned, but and then the game should have been put to bed a little bit earlier. But Dortmund just showed their strength here. I got some more post-game comments I'll get to in a minute, but I wanted to talk about a few other individual performances too.
Yeah, and I'll hit on Heidenheim like real quick too, just overall, because I think to any general football fan or maybe even newer fans to the Bundesliga, like you might see this matchup and just kind of blow it off like, oh, it's Dortmund, they're huge, and I've never even heard of this team. But like if you paid attention last year, like Heidenheim got promoted in the Bundesliga and then made a splash, as you mentioned, finished 8th. And although it is very early in the season, like they were at the top of the table, and like the people paying attention to the Bundesliga knew how good of a game this could have been.
Right.
Like to even a few games in and not letting and having no goals scored on you is a big achievement, especially for a club like Heidenheim, right? Like I think this was a properly built match, but I don't think everyone appreciated it to the extent that you should have. And then when you look at us as Dortmund fans and our results against them last year, I think it was something crazy. Like Dortmund was one of the clubs that hasn't actually beat Heidenheim in the Bundesliga because we drew them twice last year. Yeah. And getting into the goals a little bit, we scored early in this, and in the watch along, said it many times, say it again, I was panicked because we scored too early, we went up, but then it was pretty much about the same minute markers, very close to when we scored early against them last year. We went 2 up, and then they were able to get back into the game, and we ended up drawing 2-2. Luckily, that didn't happen this time. After they did get their first goal, we were able to kind of just keep grinding and get another goal quickly, which was huge because we've seen us kind of crumble in those moments before. So to get that third goal immediately was fantastic. And I mean, before we'll get into some individual stuff, but I was just going to say, like this game, yes, it was 4-2. It seemed a little closer at times, but I think that was almost spoiled. Like the good performance was almost spoiled by the no goal. Like we should have went 4-1 up, but they called a handball, which was kind of ridiculous on Gross. Mm-hmm. And then they also had that penalty, which felt a little soft against Sula. So it's like we should have went 4-1 up before they even had a chance to get that penalty. And I think those weird calls kind of spoiled an overall decent performance.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have too much to add to that. I mean, again, the first half hour was really good, like you mentioned. Getting the fourth goal too, and just keeping our foot on the gas. Dortmund in the past has had problems with that as well, going 1-2 goals up, and then is kind of starting to sit back. So the fact that we got 2 early on and kept that pressure on, we did get unlucky in that 39th minute, but still, just the pressure was on just from the beginning. I really liked the way we started that game, the mentality, the conviction, the discipline. And just the way that we played with the ball, it was pretty entertaining to watch. And Adeyemi, 2 of those first 3 goals too. He's been very, very promising this year. Adeyemi only had 3 goals in the league all of last year. Of course, he had 1 or 2, I think, outside of the Bundesliga. It might have been the Champions League or 2. But the fact that he has already 2 this year, I think he's going to blow past that no problem. Surely he's not only going to get 1 or 2 more for the rest of the season. And you're just seeing in general, goals aside, Adeyemi looks like a completely different player. I'm really hoping that this is not just some red-hot form that he's in and is going to drop pretty quickly, because he has been prone to that in the past, the hot and cold. But you see, I don't know, just these little small moments. He looks like he's really improved in the offseason. Again, in the tight spaces, the decision-making looks better. He's keeping his head up. He's still going down here pretty easily here and there, of course, but he is drawing the fouls, which I think you definitely need that in the side, despite some people might have a different opinion on that, but I think it's going to win you fouls in dangerous areas, and then, of course, you can get a goal from that. So all credit to Adeyemi for getting 2 of those goals early on. Another one from Malen, too, was a very classic Malen shot and goal. The way he's able to be on those half turns and fire off a shot from being either flat-footed or just having very little space to operate in is no easy task. And, all credit to Mullen, too, for getting one on the board pretty early here and hoping he can continue that form going forward as well.
Yeah, I was going to touch on, hit on. I almost forget that Mullen scored the first goal in this game because Adeyemi kind of stole the show and had some good moments too, outside of his goals. But then, looking back at the highlights, you're like, oh yeah, Mullen started it all with that great run from Ryerson going around that player and then getting the ball into him. And I also thought Brandt was great in this game. Seeing him play a little higher in this formation, just was able to connect a lot more, get a lot more touches on the ball, which then in turn is creating a lot more and dictating the game a lot more than what we've seen in the first few games. Benzabaini, I thought was pretty solid too. I think he had a pretty good performance in the Champions League game. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Yeah, overall, it was just solid performance. I don't know if I have anyone else to hit on specifically other than maybe hot take, not hot take. I'm interested in knowing what other people are thinking, but Mecha, we did give him his praises during that match. We're glad he took his opportunity, being a show and people who've criticized him a lot for things outside of football. It's not always about the football.
And inside of football, both, right?
And there wasn't a lot of good things in football last year that he showed us, but he had his chance. He showed it pretty well. Looking ahead of the Champions League too, I thought he was decent in that match. And my hot take is I think he's been better than Chan so far.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily a hot take, but I do think it's pretty accurate though. His athleticism is starting to be shown a bit more and more. You saw moments of it last year, but you really got to see that more in stride and larger moments as parts of the game. He is taking initiative a lot more in midfield and just bossing a bit more, which is what you want to see from a central midfielder that you pay $30 million for. He did give up a possession a few times in that first half, but again, it's not exclusive to him. The first touches and the precision was kind of lacking all across the board here and there, at least from 50 or so percent of the players. There were some missed touches, but it's early days, right? But I still see some promising moments from Mecha there. Decent performance from him all around. Again, I really liked him better than Chan these past few games. I'm not trying to pile on to Chan, but it's just, it is what it is at the moment.
Yeah. What else you got before we move on into Champions League on this one?
Really, the only other post-game comment I had here is just Chan mentioning how this should be the standard that they set in terms of their strength and holding off oppositions from winning positions. And I mentioned that already. Dortmund far too often last year, like our local club, St. Louis City, gets in winning positions, scores first, and then just kind of sits back and then sometimes concedes right after. So the fact that we were able to hold off a team like Heidenheim in a very similar situation compared to last year, I think shows a lot to our character, and hopefully this isn't just a flash in the pan. So 3 points in the bag against a tough opposition, and have also a pretty solid break between the Bundesliga and the Champions League. I think it's a pretty solid segue here. You have a good long break with the Friday matchup, and then later in the week of the following week you have Champions League. So it's a good long rest for the players, and they're able to get some good rest and rotation before going into the first game of the Champions League in the new format.
Yeah, so getting right into Champions League, I was also looking at the schedule, and I it looks like we have a lot more Friday afternoon fixtures, and I'm glad that they're throwing a lot of those. I don't know if is Bundesliga, because we had such a great performance in the Champions League last year, they're letting us have the Friday fixture so we get a little extra time. I don't know why they'd be playing favorites like that, but hey, I'll take it, because if we can have an extra rest day going in the Champions League, we'll gladly take it. But yeah, away at Club Brugge to start phase 1 of this new Champions League format, as you mentioned. Lineup looking pretty similar with Kobel in goal. We had Sula in the lineup with Schlotterbeck, with Anton getting a rest, but those are two center backs. Ryerson, right back. Benzabaini getting the start on the left again. We see Pascal Gross and Chan coming in for Mecha in our two double pivots. Then Adeyemi, Brandt, and Sabitzer, with Mullen getting the start up top. And I read that off as 4-2-3-1. I think this one was a little more fluid, moved around a lot more. Could be a 4-3-3. I know there's talk before the game, is Brandt up top again, or are we playing a false 9? And I think the answer is kind of sometimes. You see that. But I don't know. You've seen Adeyemi and Mullen kind of play that position too. And is my big question is, and this could be because, I'm never do any research and don't know really what's going on. Also didn't watch this game live, which didn't help. So because I watched it on delay, I also didn't do any Google searching or look up anything on Fatma because I didn't want to ruin anything. But is Maxi Bayer hurt? And why wouldn't he have gotten the start if Girassi wasn't ready to go 90, I guess?
My best guess is just SHININ trying to, double down on wanting his preferred formation, I guess, at the moment to try to work. And clearly Bayer did not cut that against Werder Bremen. I think you can make some tweaks here and there to set Bayer up for more of success if you are looking to do that, because the false nine of Brandt and Malen is not effective. Generally speaking, the scoreline does not reflect at all what we saw in this game. I mean, it's a big 3 points. It's ended 3-0 somehow, but Brugge had an XG of 1.24 and bossed the midfield for at least the first hour of this game. So the performance, just the contrast between the two games here, Bundesliga and Champions League, this one was a lot more lackluster. Go back to, the formation flows here and there. We did go back to kind of more of a 4-2-3-1 towards the end of the game with Schlotterbeck going back out at left back. But again, players not in their preferred positions, playing more to their weaknesses. There's no target man in the middle here, so you have no one to play off of. The wingers don't have anyone to play off of. There's not enough space in the midfield for Brandt to operate in. It's and the defensive efforts also were pretty shocking too. I mean, I think Brugge had way too many opportunities and time and space around or in the box to get chances off. I mean, the post saved us yet again. They're practically like our 12th man at this point. At times it looked similar to the team that I'm coaching for high school. I mean, there's just way too many players in the box that are not defending properly and just flat-footed. So Brugge just, they made a game out of it, man. You really got to respect the mentality and the game plan that they had coming out, because they knew exactly what they were trying to do, and they played very direct. They played very positive, and in behind in that first half, and you saw those first 45 minutes, they were completely just running us down the midfield, and we were very, very, very fortunate to be only going into halftime 0-0.
Yeah, I think their first sequence where Kobel had a really big save, ball bounced around in the box, and then they hit the post I think a couple times or maybe just once and then hit one wide. I thought there was a handball in there, and I thought that was going to be a bigger deal than if not, because I thought they were going to score, honestly. But I was like, oh, this is surely getting called back, because I thought there was a handball on Brugge in the box. But with that said, just the bodies they had in the box and how they were able to kind of dominate, bully us around in the box was so absurd. Whether it was corner kick or free kick or just them whipping a cross in, it's they were always on it, and they were always getting the second balls. And I don't know where our defense was, just kind of standing around. But they were just, and good on them, good on Brugge for going for it, right? But I kept thinking, how can we not clear the ball? How are we not even touching the ball? There was an instance too in, I think it was maybe in that same scenario, that same sequence, in the 3rd minute, where the ball just rolls past Chan in the the 6-yard box, or it's rolling out of the 6-yard box. I don't know if it was off his save or whatever. And he's just trotting along. And I think it goes through him and Benzabaini, and then the Brugge player just runs right past him from behind, and comes and gets the ball. And it was maybe 2 yards away from Chan. And he's just walking in the 18. And it was just that was a very drastic case. But again, the second ball scenarios, the ball hitting the ground, aerial duels, ground duels, we were not up for it. And at halftime, I was thinking, this is such an exciting game to watch as a neutral. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I'm a Dortmund fan, because there was a lot of back and forth. Because every time we were kind of getting on the break too, and while we were creating some chances, the quality just was not there. We were putting a lot of stuff off target.
At least collectively. I mean, you had Adeyemi, but
really bad touch. I think there was that good chance where Rierson crossed it to Malen, who tried to hit it across to the far corner of the goal, hit it across the face. It was just a poor touch. Sabitzer had that one from over the top where he could have volleyed it. And I understand that's a pretty hard, coming off a 50-yard pass, it's pretty hard to get a touch on that. But those were the good opportunities out of that. We had a lot of other ones where we had a decent look at goal and just put it wide. So there was a lot of back and forth. They definitely looked more dangerous. They also had some, I think the quality wasn't quite there for them either. Obviously, they hit the post 3 times. But I expect way better from us. And that's where I was like, man, if I was a neutral, I'd be so excited to watch this game. But except the final product was not there. It could have been like 6-6 at half, maybe.
Yeah, right. And the fact that we had 4 center midfielders in our starting lineup and we're still finding ways to play through our midfield and just all over us in general was definitely a concern that SHININ should have been taking note of going into halftime. The fact that, yeah, again, like we mentioned, that it was so easy for them to play in behind. We were flat-footed. We were not awake. And I always tell my players too, like if whether it's you're not in the right position or if you just don't have the strength and size to win the first ball, you need to be in a position to win the second ball. And that, like you mentioned already, we were not winning either of those. So this was a pretty different performance that you saw after a very, very generous break, 5-day break between the Bundesliga and the Champions League. So you're expecting us to look a bit more awake and alert for that first game coming out of the gate for this Champions League. Of course, you're away, and Brugge, I definitely underestimated them, but still, I don't think the players should have been in that position. And thankfully, like you mentioned before, we have just more of the quality top down, whether it's starting, and definitely the bench too made all the difference. The subs came in and completely changed this game. JFG, I'll say, actually. I'll go back to Adam there and just touch more on JFG. I mean, he is, a lot of people are saying, should he be the starter? But, Adeyemi puts on good performances too when he starts, so those two can definitely, it's just a healthy competition between the two. I think they should continue fighting it out, and it just depends on the opposition too. I mean, JG is not the person that's going to be tracking back too much as the wing back. He's not someone that's going to have, I mean, of course he had moments this game. He did show some strength to hold up play whenever we were under pressure. But Adeyemi can really do a good job of drawing the fouls, getting himself into tackles. JG is a little bit more of the player that's going to be more on the ball work. So it just kind of depends for me, outside of the healthy competition, what opposition do you have in front of you that you are willing to, try different things. But JG, just wanted to shout him out because he beat Brugge on the same move twice. And we've also seen the same goal against, oh my God, first game of the season. Why is it escaping me? We're both thinking. Either
Frankfurt.
way,
Was it Frankfurt?
Yeah. I don't know why I was wanting to say Augsburg. I knew that was wrong.
The thing, I knew it was Christensen. I knew the defender. I knew who it was, but I was like, who's he play for?
Yeah.
He had some red, but a lot of Bundesliga teams have red. I don't know.
Right. It's the same move, and JG is really clinical there, and both moments, and you just see that his mentality is there too. It's every game I get another slap in the face for my comments on him a few weeks ago for saying this might. He's already had kind of like his breakout year, and he could build on top of that, but he continues to just bust through new ceilings and show us what he could do. So all credit to him.
I mean, I'll also remind anyone who may have said it. I'm not you, and this is not you. I'm coming in to save you a little bit. You're not the only one, and your comments weren't even that bad. Like, I understood your comment before, but I'll just remind everyone who some people out there thought, because his performance against Phoenix Lübeck, that he should not even be anywhere near the pitch, because it's like, oh, he can't even make runs against a fourth division team, and now people are like, oh, why isn't he starting? Yeah. And so, and yeah, no matter why he's not starting, like we have seen him start, right? And I think when he didn't get the start, that's when we saw Adeyemi come in. Was it Adeyemi come in and get a brace in a game? Like this competition is great. It's awesome. And I think we've seen, like, there's a shout for Malen, him getting the start over Malen, and then maybe Adeyemi playing out on the right. I know JG's always out on the left. I think that's where that's where it gets a little tricky. But again, like, you can't be mad at the competition. Adeyemi has looked fantastic. Adeyemi gets a brace in the last game. JG comes in this game, gets his brace again. This is second brace. Chance to get a hat trick if they would have let him take the PK, which would have been awesome. My thought was you
got to get the confidence for Girassi, though. I totally understand.
It is good for Girassi, but I also thought, I was like, Girasi's going to get more goals. He'll have more chances. But yeah, to see him come in and just build, because like it was a great start, and if he can just keep building, just keep getting these, and know that he can do it from the bench, because obviously, like, if he keeps just coming on from the bench, like, I get frustration can build, and you're going to want to start, but with how many games we have, like, it's good. Like, I wouldn't be surprised maybe he gets to start next game, and that's where we see this rotation of yeah, you subbed on, you made a huge impact, but you subbed on, and now you have more minutes in the tank for next game. So we might see a lot of that, and it's good that both these guys are firing and fighting for the spot. I am curious. I don't think they mentioned him on the broadcast, but they definitely showed him during Ville.
I was just about to say, there's one name that we have not mentioned.
Yeah, I want to see him more, and it is a little surprising we haven't seen him yet. I don't remember if he subbed on for a few minutes. No, but I will say it again. I've said it before. Like, he is so young, obviously, but I think with how much we saw him in preseason and what we have seen from him before, I'm a little surprised we haven't seen him yet. I don't think this. I understand why he didn't come in on this game. I mean, I could look at it both ways, because I think at the time when they showed him on camera, it was still really tight. We hadn't quite sealed it yet. And I'm not saying he's just a player you bring in to seal the deal, right? Or when the game's put to bed. But yeah, I don't know. It'd just be nice to see him.
I know it's tough. And I said this a million times. It's a good problem to have, but it is a bit of a problem that we're not seeing him too much. But there's going to be plenty of games this year for him to have that opportunity. I mean, we're looking at 3 competitions, also the World Cup too, Club World Cup. So there's going to be 4 competitions actually. So plenty of minutes to go around. It's just a matter of how can they earn them. And I did want to talk a little bit more about Sabitzer too and his role, but I think we could save that just because it's one of our questions, which, if I mentioned already, we have a few listener questions I asked before that this morning, if anybody had any thoughts or questions for the show, to throw them in our Discord or our socials. So some have thrown them, a few in here. Did you want to get into a few real quick before we get out of here, or?
Yeah, let's do. I do want to I'll give one more player a shout. Just there was a moment that I really liked and appreciated from Anton, who I don't think we haven't talked a whole ton about Anton, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think we've talked about any of our center backs. We have. I'll just say, I put them in this game. We see Sula, Schlotterbeck. We've seen Anton and Zula. I love that we're seeing some consistency with Sula. Like, we talked about it a lot when he came back for preseason and he trimmed down so much, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait!"
Completely rejuvenated.
Yeah, I like that. I almost put all of our center backs on the same level. Right now, as far I don't know who the best 2 is. If we're gonna play 2, maybe we're gonna play all 3 of them. That's obviously been a topic of conversation too. But I feel pretty solid with them. I know there was one match we didn't look great. But just one thing that really stood out about Anton, it was a very small moment, but before JG's second goal, he came up and won the ball, passed it off to, I don't know if it was Sabitzer or Metro, whoever ended up passing it to JG. But he ran up high, stole the ball, and then just turned around and ran back. Mm-hmm. And I was just great. Because I think so many times you can see these center backs get excited and just be like, I'm going to bomb it straight into the box, straight into the 18. But I almost look at that and having the smarts of seeing what's happened all game long, and then them being able to turn and try to get us on the counter, where he plays the ball and then he gets back, just tracks back. It was super simple, nothing too crazy, but just to recognize we got enough people up there. I don't need to get up there either. That's not my job. And he just tracked back. I was cool. And then we scored from it. So you can give him credit if you want. I don't know. But I liked it. It was a weird moment, but I liked it.
We talked about the other 2 here and there. Sula has completely revamped his game too. He's ranked either first or second, or I'll say top 3 in touches every single game so far. And it's not just touching the ball to get touches on the ball. He is very, very involved in our build-up. He switches roles from time to time. He gets himself involved in midfield. Hell, he gets himself involved in the fucking attacking third at times. And he has some terrific line-breaking passes that we've seen just in these last 4 weeks. So he's going to be a great asset and a absolutely vital asset too, because, again, only 3 center halves in this side. So he's going to be huge for that, just constant rotation there. But my best 2 has got to be Schlotterbeck and Sula at the moment. And then whenever we have rotation, which is going to be plenty of it, that's whenever Anton's going to slot in. But if you didn't have any other thoughts here for other individual ones, I just want to get through a few of these questions here. Cool. All right. So the first one is from Alex. He joined us on our live stream. Shout out to Alex. He was just asking what's going on with Sabitzer. Of course, he's had a completely different role so far this year. Got a few quotes actually from Sabitzer right after the postgame talking to Sky. He said, "The 6 is better. It's such a different game for me than in the center. Not the ideal position. But if you play where the coach puts you, and you have to respect that. So Sabitzer has been playing more as the right winger, that number 7, when he prefers playing more centrally. And then SHININ actually saw that from the media and had a quote as well saying, "My relationship with Sabitzer is very good. I don't need the press to tell me that Sabitzer prefers to play as a number 6. He's already told me that 10,000 times. I also know that Sabitzer plays better at the number 6. But there are situations where we need Sabitzer in that position. At the moment, he's playing there. But he'll also play lots of games as a number 6. I really wanted to have Sabitzer in the side against De Kopier because we knew that he's very dangerous, and that actually rotates a lot whenever they're up high, but they didn't do that today because they were very deep. Sabitzer is absolutely out of the discussion for me. He's a very important player." He goes on to talk a bit more, but I'll just kind of wrap that quote up there. Generally speaking, so I get where SHININ's coming from here in the sense that, like, Sabitzer has the legs and the IQ to press from up front. He's got plenty of the work rate to go all the way back in midfield if he's not able to win the ball high up the field. And of course, whenever we're with the ball, he can connect passes. But having that said, I do think you can utilize him a bit more in that midfield in other situations. Probably more situations than not. You know, he operates better with the game a bit more in front of him, and he could see the field in front of him. And of course, too, whenever Chan is being Chan, you're going to need other center midfielders to plug up that middle a bit more, do the pressing from, the center of the field, and also just help from build up, which Sabitzer has also done that in the past as well. So you have, again, good options and tough decisions to make for your double pivot, whether it's going to be in the 4-2-3-1 or if, SHININ wants to do the 3-4-3 or however he wants to set up here. Either way, you have 4 center midfielders in the side right now that could play that role. Mecha, Gross, Chan, and Sabitzer. And they all bring some different things here to the table, but I'm interested to see what oppositions that SHININ will put him there at that number 6, because right now Gross, I think, is kind of an instant lock, just for the reasons that we mentioned already. Mecha is definitely making an argument for himself, but outside of that, when you have 2 games a week, sometimes potentially we're going to even see 3 in 7 days here whenever we start to really get thick in the fixtures. I would like to see Sabitzer more at that 6 role.
Yeah, I feel like we hit on that pretty early on. Like, we'd like to see him in that role alongside Pascal Gross. It seems like it's kind of one of those situations where, with that comment from SHININ, it's like trying to play his best 11, just flat out best 11 players, not best 11 positionally. And that's where he's like, Sabitzer's one of my best. I want him on the field. I'm going to plug him where I need, where I can. But you know what I mean? It seems like I just want to play. These are my best 11, not formationally. These are my best 11. They are on the field, flat out. But then the issue is like, well, are they the best 11 personnel if they're playing slightly out of position? And that's where we haven't quite seen what we know we can from Sabitzer, and why we want to see him drop a little deeper, because you're not getting the best out of him. So it's like, I'm not SHININ. I'm not the coach. I can't make that decision. It's just my opinion as I sit on my couch right here.
Across
and
the pond.
It's a little frustrating. But yeah, it is really weird. And I agree with you. Like, Mecha is putting a good shout in for getting that starting spot too. And then if it's Gross as this kind of like, if it's the 4-2-3-1, if it's Gross, maybe Mecha or Chan, with Brandt in the number 10, like I'm like, if Sabitzer doesn't take that spot from Chan or Mecha, should he be taking that wing spot? Or like, because I'd even prefer Adeyemi, JG, Malin, and then your striker up top. Like, that's where it gets weird, right? Like, I don't know. It's good that it's on his mind, I guess, and he knows. Like, I like the honesty there, but I don't agree with just playing him wherever just to get him in.
Yeah, I don't have too many other thoughts on that. Like I said, the full quotes here on the BVB News blog Twitter here, it goes down like a handful of other posts in that thread, so you can see the full quote. But SHININ, like you mentioned, is aware of what the general public feels about Sabitzer playing at that number 7 and preferably playing centrally. But like I mentioned before with JG and Adeyemi, I think it just depends on the opposition for where SHININ is going to slot him in. We had a few other questions here, ones we already touched on, like our thoughts on the false 9 and just the tactics in general. I think we've already kind of given our general thoughts on a lot of that stuff, and I've definitely mentioned or touched on the false nine, as well as like, and we could briefly kind of give our take because we've already kind of mentioned this already too. But another question here is JG's best role as a super sub or a starter right now? And I've already kind of mentioned, for me, it just depends on the opposition. I mean, are we trying to draw a bit more fouls, play more wide in the midfield, or are we trying to, get an opposition to go ISO against one of our wingers and have a striker that can, play off of for JG? It just kind of depends. It's a game-by-game situation for me. But either way, super effective at the moment, JG.
Yeah, and I think there is something to him coming on as that super sub on the left side after a team has just been ran down by Adeyemi. It's just like your right back's been dealing with Adeyemi all match long. Your right winger's been dealing with him, trying to keep up with him. And now you bring JBG on, who is also quick, has really good feet, and is just going to run at you and run at you and run at you. That's tough. That's really tough. And I think you saw Brugge falling off a lot towards the end. They were given a lot at the beginning of the match, but they were falling off, and you just can't hang with him. So I think it is very. I don't know if that's his best position, but that is definitely a really good strategy to throw him on after Adeyemi's been breaking teams down. Because that is something where their play is a little different, but that is something like Adeyemi can be so good at. He's just nonstop, and he's so fast, and he's so hard for defenders to track. Because Adeyemi was still on the pitch too when JG came on. They just shifted him a little bit. So,
right. Shout out to Ali, who was just on the other week. He had a question saying, "What's Malin's role going forward?" Which is a good question. We've seen Malin play a small handful of different things over the years. A false nine is definitely not it. I'm probably wrong in saying this, but I think the last time that we saw him being that sole striker, false nine, just the central player there, was against Leipzig in the Pokal a year and a half or something ago. And we saw how completely ineffective and toothless that was. And I think you do not get a lot out of Malin playing him there, even a year plus down the road here to just the other day again in the Champions League. And even against an opposition that, respectfully, even though they had all the heart and they had a very solid game plan, they don't have that quality to finish off a lot of those chances. I mean, Malin still couldn't really get himself involved as much as he would have, I would imagine he would have liked in this game. So for me, it's still right out here on the right side. That's home for him. I think that's also just his spot at the moment because we have so many left wingers in our side. But also too, if we have someone that is playing on the right, and that slot is not available, I think a secondary option could just be playing as a second striker next to Guirassy. He loves to play off the likes of Haller, and I think that could be the same exact thing for Guirassy, just given defenders, again, gravitate towards that pure number 9, leaving plenty of space in behind for Malin to exploit there.
Yeah, nothing really to add. I think it's just on the right. And I think we've been seeing him on the top spot too, but one of the downsides, and maybe this is why you're seeing Sabitzer play that or Brandt play that side too, if he's going up top, is like, obviously Şahin doesn't see enough in Duranville yet to let him get a start in one of these matches. And so Malin almost doesn't have as much competition. And then if you're out of necessity putting him up top, and then this kind of feeds back into that Sabitzer conversation, right? That he is now that right winger. And I think that's a bit detrimental to a lot of a few different things. Duranville, Malin and Sabitzer. It's a little weird, but as you said, Malin kind of on the right is his best.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, again, we touched on a lot of these other questions already, so I don't want to repeat myself too much and just drag on time here. But again, thank you for anyone and everyone that submitted questions. I love whenever anyone just engages with the show with this kind of stuff. So we'll be sure to post more of asking for questions about different episodes going forward here. But that's really all I had. Again, we had lots of thoughts. I had definitely some criticisms and some tweaks I would make about these two games, more definitely so the Brugge game than the Heidenheim game. But overall, got 6 points out of these, 2 wins, and didn't concede against Brugge in the Champions League, which we definitely should have. But either way, on paper, you take that going forward, and we march on, man. We're still undefeated in the league. We're in one of the better positions than we've been in the Bundesliga in several years now. I forget the stat off the top of my head, so I don't want to like try to remember and then just completely butcher it. But we're definitely like better standing now than we have been in the last like 4 or 5 seasons or something like that in the Bundesliga. So we're really we're riding this high right now, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the exact stats, but looking at last year, I mean, we all know like it was those first few matches were just tough to watch, and we were just barely scraping by, and there was a lot of Malen last-minute heroics, Malen getting a goal creating a goal out of nowhere for a couple 1-0 victories and a couple, I think, 1-1 draws. But this is a much better start. I like it. And then, the 3-0 win, not a pretty one, but getting 3 goals and 3 points in the Champions League is a nice little topper. But we got a tough one this weekend. We don't have to go like fully in-depth preview, but Stuttgart on the weekend, they did just have a Champions League game, played Real Madrid. Pretty tough start for them. They do have an extra day of rest
against Madrid.
They played on Tuesday, I believe. So a little more rest going into the weekend. We are away at Stuttgart. It is 11:30 Eastern Time kickoff, and
Sunday game as well. Sunday game as well.
Oh, Sunday. I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
That ruins my plans to watch it this weekend. I was thinking I'll wake up Saturday morning, and nope. All right.
That's true. You're traveling with City. If you haven't watched Stuttgart much this season already, I mean, Demirovic has really found a home there in Stuttgart. They've made some really great signings, and just overall their business has been great this summer, considering they lost some of their best players. For the likes of Girassi, of course, but also Anton as well came to Dortmund as well. But they again just really picked themselves up after losing such players and are still hitting hard. I mean, Demirovic 3 goals so far in 3 games. This is going to be a tough game. Doesn't sell it correctly. I'm not finding the right words there. It's going to be an unbelievably difficult match. Stuttgart has completely played us off the field the last like 3 times we played them, and even before that, the game 4 games ago now, if I'm not wrong, whenever it was the thriller where we just kept scoring and they kept coming back for us to bottle the league eventually. I mean, Stuttgart, they're really going to be a well-organized team. They press really well, and they've just been generally impressive. And it's going to be an exciting game from a neutral standpoint.
Yeah, I think we will see. I think we'll see Anton get the start. I think Girassi gets his start as they make their return to Stuttgart. Is there any other like rotational things you think we might see, or anyone you want to see specifically?
No, I mean, like you mentioned already, I think you're going to see, and Anton is also a good shout too. Sula has started a few matches in a row. Schlotterbeck with the red card had a little bit of a rest, so he'll be, I would imagine, be good to go here for a start, no problem. Hoping we get out of Stuttgart with no injuries and 3 points. Other than that, I don't have too many other thoughts now.
All right, score predictions. Going. I feel like I've done this.
To me, Jake.
I've done this so many times. I'm going to go 2-1 though. Girassi
2-1 us.
Yeah, 2-1 us. 1-2. Girassi late winner. Dunks on him.
I'm going to go 2-2 draw. I don't think we leave Stuttgart with 3 points. I hope we do, but I just don't think it's going to happen. It's going to take us a little bit longer for us to start to compete with them, which is kind of crazy to say, but that's just me though. Again, I really hope I'm wrong. I'd gladly be wrong.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that wraps match coverage and preview and everything. I had no clue that this game was on Sunday, though, so I appreciate you letting me know, because I was fully planning to, all right, wake up in the hotel, watch this match before I go do anything, and that's really funny. So now I don't know what I'm going to do Saturday. I mean, I'll watch some soccer of some kind, but it ruins all my weekend plans. Stuttgart on the weekend, 11:30 Eastern kickoff time on Sunday. And then, we'll be back next week. We appreciate you guys hanging out and listening. We do have a guest coming back. Jake from 50 Plus Donor is going to be back with us to recap the Stuttgart game and then get ready for, we got a quick turnaround, Sunday to Friday fixture again against Bochum. So we'll be back next week to talk about that. As Carver mentioned, make sure you get connected in our Discord, especially if, I'll just say it, social media is kind of a toxic place, and then maybe you don't want to hang out there. Our Discord's way more fun, and it's just good vibes. So
it's not kind of. Places like Twitter is a Nazi cesspool. I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to stop myself there.
Twitter sucks. Join us on Discord, although we'll still tweet and stuff here and there, but Discord's way more fun. So Find the links to everything in the description of this episode. We appreciate you guys hanging out. We will see you later.
I lifted the wrong side.
Keeping that in there.